In late December of 2022, Canadian man Greg Pietzschala responded to reports of a car in a ditch in Haldimand County, Ontario. The 29-year-old had completed his 10-month probationary period and was on his first day as an Ontario Provincial Police Constable. Upon reaching the scene and approaching the vehicle, Pietzschala was ambushed by its occupants, Randall McKenzie and Brandy Stewart Sperry. According to information released by his superiors, he had no time to defend himself as the couple shot him. They then abandoned their vehicle and fled on foot before allegedly stealing another car from a person present at the scene. Law enforcement issued an alert advising residents to shelter in place as they searched for the couple. Pietzschala, who'd reportedly wanted to be a cop since he was 5 years old, was rushed to Haldimand General Hospital where he succumbed to his injuries. 25-year-old Mackenzie and Stuart Sperry, aged 30, were later arrested and charged with murder in the first degree. Both had been wanted by the police at the time of the fatal shooting. Mackenzie had failed to appear in court for gun possession and assault on a Hamilton police officer, while Stuart Sperry was wanted for breaching bail conditions. They were ordered to remain in custody during a hearing in January of 2023, with their next court date set for late February. Number 7. John Eric Cole. 29-year-old John Eric Cole was gunned down by a co-worker in November of 2021 during his first shift at a manufacturing plant in Pinson, Alabama. Dexter Rashad Walker, aged 34, shot the man multiple times in the back, killing him. He initially fled the scene but later returned and surrendered himself to Jefferson County deputies, who arrested him for murder. The specifics of the dispute that had occurred between the two men remained unclear. However, the company for which they'd worked, the Samuel Associated Tube Group, released a statement revealing that Walker and Cole knew each other from outside of the plant. Cole was a stepfather to the former's son, and that relationship had been the focus of a legal dispute between the men earlier in the year. As indicated by court documents, Walker's son had told him that he didn't feel safe when Cole was around in the home they shared. Walker suspected the stepfather of being abusive, and the judge issued an order that required Cole and the boy's mother to stay away from Walker. The fatal shooting in the plant was suspected to have been an escalation of their pre-existing conflict. Number 6. Seller. On the night of February the 6th of 2015, a Texas teenager took to Twitter to complain about a job she was due to start the following day at Jet's Pizza in Mansfield. The employee, whose handle was Seller, used curse words to express her disappointment regarding her situation. The vulgar message reached the pizzeria's owner, Robert Waple, who was consequently moved to tweet for the first time since he'd started his account in 2009. He replied to Seller the following morning and wrote that she wasn't starting a new job because he just fired her. Waple added, "Good luck with your no money, no job life," after terminating Seller on what was supposed to be her first shift. Some Twitter users defended the teen, with one of them pointing out that she had merely exercised her right to free speech and had never mentioned the company's name, and thus her firing was unjustified. On the other side of the argument, seemingly satisfied that he'd made his point, Waple wrote that he was going to check in again in 6 years. Number 5. Dajor Russ. Dajor Russ was on his first day as a DoorDash driver on July the 2nd of 2022 and was delivering groceries at the Clement Kern Gardens gated community in Detroit, Michigan. As he exited his car to drop off the order, 22-year-old Russ was suspected to have gotten into an argument with someone in the area. From a dark-colored SUV, the suspect shot at Russ multiple times, initially hitting him in the foot. The vehicle circled round and made another pass. At that point, more shots were fired upon Russ, who was struck again and left in critical condition. Kevin Pine, a community resident, told law enforcement that the shooting had taken place outside his door and that Russ was bleeding to death when he found him. The delivery driver passed away from his injuries, and local law enforcement described the incident as a 100% senseless display of violence. As of August 2022, the shooter hadn't been identified, and Crime Stoppers was offering a cash reward of up to $2,500. for information leading to his capture. Number 4. Miguel Garcia Naranjo. On December the 27th of 2021, in the Colombian city of Cúcuta, a security guard was involved in a deadly gunfight during his first day on the job. As shown in CCTV footage, Miguel Garcia Naranjo was sitting outside in his work attire when an armed man walked up to him from behind. Several people present at the scene fled when they saw him coming. The assailant, later named as 25-year-old Venezuelan man Riquet Samuel Mercado, pressed the barrel of his gun into the security guard's neck. 22-year-old Naranjo reacted to the intimidation attempt by pushing back and jumping out of his seat. In the ensuing struggle, he was shot in the abdomen by Mercado, who then tried fleeing toward his motorcycle-riding accomplice. In spite of his critical gunshot wound, Naranjo drew his pistol and fired several shots that struck Mercado. The latter never reached the getaway driver and died where he fell. According to local radio station FM Santander, he'd been arrested on suspicion of murder 2 years prior, but was released after the authorities had failed to charge him within the legally allowed time frame. Naranjo was taken to Medical Duarte Hospital, but staff was unable to save him. The incident was regarded as an example of escalating violence in the Colombian city, which borders Venezuela and was known as a hotspot of narco-trafficking activity. It had reportedly seen a 30% year-on-year increase in homicides in 2020. Number 3. Justice Booz. 23-year-old Justice Booz was part of a crew working to remove several trees from a home in Guilderland, upstate New York in early May of 2016. Booz and his fiancée, Kristen Hickey, were reportedly $60 short of covering their rent for the month. Through a friend, Booz found a landscaping job with Countryside Tree Care that fittingly paid $60 for a day's work. On May the 4th, during his first day on the site, Booz was tasked with feeding debris into a Bandit 250 wood chipper. Guilderland security camera footage showed him and a co-worker guiding felled tree trunks and branches with their hands into the machine. They weren't wearing hard hats or safety goggles, as recommended by the Occupational Safety and Health Administration. At some point, Booz got caught in the powerful metal blades meant to shred massive logs at 2 feet per second. He was dragged headfirst into the machine and suffered devastating injuries. None of his co-workers witnessed the incident until one of them heard a weird noise and saw his feet sticking out of the chipper. Booz died on the spot, with a coroner's report subsequently listing severe sharp force and shredded injuries as the cause of death. After a 2016 investigation, the Occupational Safety and Health Administration fined Booz's employer over $140,000, alleging several violations, including failure to provide adequate training, gear, or supervision. Number 2. Alejandra Almaguer. On November the 19th of 2022, Texas woman Alejandra Almaguer was near the end of her shift working as a clerk at a Houston convenience store. An unidentified man entered the store, and as shown in surveillance footage, he initially acted like a regular customer. In the moments that followed, without warning or provocation, he jumped over the counter and charged Almaguer. He pinned the woman to the floor, pulled out a knife, and tried to cut her on the neck. Almaguer later told ABC 13, "He couldn't stab me since I was holding his arm, so I was on his arm and he started punching me." The attacker stopped after a customer walked into the store and called the police. He grabbed a bag of cupcakes before fleeing the scene. Speaking to the media, Almaguer recounted that she broke down in the ambulance after realizing that the attack, which left her with bruises and scratches, could have been fatal. It marked the woman's first and last night working at the store, as she quit in the immediate aftermath. Before we move on to number 1, be sure to stay tuned afterwards if you'd like. If you haven't seen part 1 yet, it's coming up right after this. Number 1. New York City New Year's incident. Shortly after 10 p.m. on New Year's Eve 2022, Maine teenager Trevor Bickford attacked a group of police officers in New York City in the Times Square area. He charged them armed with a kukri, a large bladed weapon similar to a machete. 19-year-old Bickford came at the cops from behind and shouted, "God is great!" in Arabic. He first struck a rookie officer on his first day patrolling with the NYPD. 23-year-old Paul Cozzolino suffered a skull fracture and a wound that required both external and internal stitching to mend. Bigfoot then slashed 8-year veteran Luis Iorio, aged 33, leaving him with a gash on his head. The teenager attacked another rookie officer, Michael Hanna, but the latter was able to draw his service weapon and shoot him in the shoulder. Bigfoot and the 3 injured officers were taken to a local hospital, and they subsequently recovered. The teenager had reportedly been monitored by the FBI for nearly a month leading up to the attack, after the authorities determined that he harbored extremist beliefs. It was suspected that he'd become radicalized in the summer of 2022 and had intended to become a holy martyr through the attack. He'd chosen the iconic Times Square celebration where thousands gather annually as the time to strike in order to draw attention to his cause. Damian Williams, the U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of New York, released a statement arguing that the attack had had the opposite of the intended effect, as it only served to spotlight the coordination, resolve, and dedication of American law enforcement to guard the well-being of the public. In February of 2023, Bigfoot pleaded not guilty to a plethora of charges, from an 18-count indictment that included 3 counts of attempted murder. Since some of the charges were connected to extremism, they allowed for increased penalties. Bigfoot's next court date was set for May the 3rd of 2023. Number 8. Ashley Gwendon. Rookie police officer Ashley Gwendon of the Prince William County Police Department in Virginia was responding to a domestic disturbance call in Woodbridge in February of 2016. The incident occurred during 28-year-old Gwendon's first shift on the job. Active duty Army Staff Sergeant Ronald Williams Hamilton had been engaged in a heated argument with his wife, Crystal, which devolved into a physical altercation. The 29-year-old woman was able to call law enforcement before Hamilton killed her by shooting her in the back. As Gwendon approached the home with 2 other officers, Hamilton opened fire on them as well. Jesse Hempen and David McEwen, both in their 30s and veterans of the force, were injured in the shooting and survived. Gwendon, who was also a member of the U.S. Marine Corps Reserve, was struck by gunfire and succumbed to her injuries in a local hospital. Hamilton was arrested at the scene while law enforcement recovered a .45 caliber pistol and a rifle from his home. During his trial, Gwendon's mother called him a vicious, cold-blooded, heartless killer, while Crystal's mother nearly collapsed in the witness box, referring to him as a coward. A jury deadlocked on giving Hamilton the death penalty before he was sentenced to 7 consecutive life terms in September of 2018. Number 7. Dylan Harrison. On October the 19th of 2021, Dylan Harrison was on his first shift as a part-time officer with the Alamo Police Department in Georgia. The 27-year-old initiated a traffic stop in the parking lot of the Circle K opposite the station. An unnamed suspect refused to give up his information and engaged Harrison in a verbal altercation that escalated to him pushing the officer. Harrison consequently used his taser on the aggressive man, and he was subsequently taken to the Wheeler County Jail. He was later revealed to have been an associate of 43-year-old Damian Anthony Ferguson, who had a lengthy criminal record that included felony arson, theft, and aggravated assault on an officer. Ferguson approached the station later in the day, ambushed Harrison in the parking lot, and shot him dead before fleeing the scene. The officer was survived by a wife and a 6-month-old baby. A manhunt was launched, and on October the 10th, a Georgia SWAT team and the U.S. Marshal Service took Ferguson into custody at his residence without incident. In December, a Wheeler County grand jury indicted him on several counts that included malice murder, felony murder, aggravated assault on a peace officer, and bias-motivated intimidation of first responders. As of 2022 updates, Harrison pleaded not guilty to all the charges levied against him. Number 6. Caitlin Walls. Texas woman Caitlin Walls from the Colony was fired over a Facebook post before she even got a chance to head into work at a daycare center in 2015. The 27-year-old single mother's choice of words was in stark opposition to what her employer would have been expecting of her. As she wrote on the platform, "I start my new job today, but I absolutely hate working at daycare." The message was shared around local groups, including one that was centered on yard sales and had over 8,000 followers. A number of social media users began criticizing and insulting Walls, with one going as far as to say she had the bubonic plague. The woman's day continued spiraling downwards when her would-be employer got wind of the social media exchanges. Walls was contacted and told that she needn't bother coming into work as her position had been terminated. The woman later talked to a local media outlet and explained that she was devastated by the outcome of her post. Walls maintained that she'd never meant to offend anyone, adding that as a mother herself, she didn't hate children and had merely been venting. Number 5. Lawrence Davis. A worker's first day at work shouldn't be his last day on earth, commented an Occupational Safety and Health Administration employee while examining the tragic death of Lawrence Daquan Davis. In August of 2012, Davis was a temporary worker at a Bacardi bottling core facility in Jacksonville, Florida. He was cleaning glass from under the hoist of a palletizer, a machine that stacks cases of the parent company's well-known rum. A second employee then restarted the palletizer, and Davis was fatally crushed by it. A YouTube video reviewing surveillance footage from inside the plant and explaining the circumstances leading up to Davis's death has since been viewed close to 19 million times. He was survived by a fiancée, Alicia, who was reportedly expecting their first child in October. A subsequent OSHA investigation into the matter revealed that Bacardi bottling temporary employees hadn't been trained in lockout-tagout procedures to prevent the accidental startup of machines. The company was cited with 12 safety violations, 2 of which were deemed willful and 9 serious. He was fined $192,000 and, in a later statement, claimed it had resolved all the safety and health issues identified by OSHA. Number 4. Trevor Weiner. On February 15th of 2019, Trevor Weiner was on the first day of his human resources internship at the Henry Pratt Company industrial valve manufacturing plant in Aurora, Illinois. 21-year-old Weiner was a student at the Northern Illinois University and set to graduate in May. A number of media outlets reported him as being in the meeting when 45-year-old Gary Martin was told that his employment was being terminated. The latter had been expecting to be fired from his 15-year position at the company and brought a laser-sighted handgun into the factory. He went on a shooting spree and Weiner was among the first victims to be gunned down. Martin also claimed the lives of an HR manager, a plant manager, a forklift operator, and a stockroom attendant, ranging in ages from 32 to 55. Martin injured another worker who subsequently recovered and then engaged responding police officers in a shootout. 4 members of law enforcement sustained non-life-threatening gunshot wounds, and a 5th was struck by shrapnel before they shot and killed Martin. Aurora police later revealed that the gunman had been arrested 6 times in the past for offenses that included domestic violence and violating a restraining order. Additionally, he had served a prison sentence in Mississippi for aggravated assault in the mid-1990s, which barred him from legally owning a firearm in the state of Illinois. Number 3. Francis Arty. Rookie Massachusetts city bus driver Francis Arty was on his first ever route on June the 24th of 2013. Simultaneously, at around 5 p.m., Laura Erickson was at her Worcester home with her 3 sons. The woman was in the shower when the Worcester Regional Transit Authority bus driven by 27-year-old Arty crashed deep into her house, reportedly reaching as far as the cellar. Erickson would later recall seeing the toilet fly out of the wall. As emergency workers responded to the incident, Erickson was taken out on a gurney, but neither she nor her family was reported to have sustained serious injuries. There were 4 passengers on the bus at the time, all of whom emerged from the wreck largely unscathed. Arty, however, was freed after about an hour, as he'd become trapped between the house and bus. When a tow truck eventually removed the vehicle from the building, it became evident that its front had been obliterated and replaced with massive pieces of the home's wall. Arty was left in critical condition and rushed to a local hospital where he underwent life-saving surgery. An extensive investigation into the incident revealed he'd been at fault in the crash, and he was charged with driving negligently as to endanger, failure to stay within marked lanes, and speeding. Today's topic was requested by Hayes My Life, Mike Dunham, and Emperor Chow. If you have any other topics you'd like to learn about, subscribe and let us know in the comments section below. Number 2. Ursio Perez Jr. Ursio Perez Jr. was helping transport a large piece of industrial machinery during his first day at Navan Hire Hardware and Safety Training Limited in Ireland on January the 16th of 2016. He was holding a heavy hydraulic press as it was being moved on a forklift. The industrial vehicle was being operated by the company director's 18-year-old son, whom it would later emerge hadn't received the proper training in handling it. The press was roughly 5.5 feet high and precariously standing upright on the prongs of the forklift, with Perez holding support in its side. The machinery hadn't been adequately secured and it toppled over, falling on 20-year-old Perez and crushing him beneath its weight. The man's father, Ursio Perez Sr., worked for the same company. He would later recall seeing his son on the ground covered in blood and claimed that the harrowing image would live with him forever. The younger Perez passed away from his injuries and an investigation was launched. The company was fined the equivalent of over $160,000 for several breaches identified by the inquiry. A judge, however, concluded that the violations hadn't been deliberately committed to maximize profits and that the fatal accident had stemmed from a naive attempt at completing a difficult task. The company assisted with repatriating Perez's body to his native Brazil, while also covering the family's travel and funeral expenses. Number 1. Charles Punter. On December the 12th of 2011, at the end of his first day at a job with a company called Max Impact, English marketing man Charles Punter from Colchester, Essex, was planning on taking a bus home. Co-worker Rebecca Price, aged 29, then offered him a lift and the pair then set off in her Ford car. While driving at roughly 45 miles per hour on a stretch of road between Tiptree and Colchester, where the limit was 30, Price lost control of her vehicle. She was in the process of rounding a bend when she smashed into an oncoming Ford Ranger. Price, a mother of one, survived, but 25-year-old Punter suffered fatal injuries in the crash. Investigators deduced that she'd been speeding, and during the ensuing trial, the woman pleaded guilty to causing death by careless driving. She was given a 6-month suspended sentence and banned from driving for 2.5 years. Through a representative, Punter's family expressed deep disappointment that Price hadn't been given a custodial sentence, adding that the perceived light punishment was not a sufficient deterrent for other reckless drivers. Thanks for watching. Which first-time event of your life would you choose to re-experience? Let us know in the comments section below.